up, guys? My name is Will Alexander, and today I'm going to give you guys my review of the Spring Break Powder Twin. So this isn't Spring Break's first twin snowboard, but it is the first within their powder lineup. They made a Spring Break twin, which was a asymmetric twin, which is now just Capita's A Simulator, I think is what it's called. That's been around for years, but it only came in really small sizes. So I think the largest size that they had with that one was like a 154 or something like that. And I think we were under the like 30 centimeter nose and tail width. So this one is the first that you're going to get within that powder lineup that when you get with like the Slush Slasher, the powder racers, all those different type of powder specific boards that are all actually under the Spring Break name, as opposed to the Capita Spring Break, whatever you want to call it. So before we get into the review, I'm going to give you guys some of the specs. It comes in with a dual blaster ash pop core, which I'm guessing is going to be a blend of poplar and ash wood. Poplar is used in most snowboards, and ash is a new one, which I think is a little bit lighter and a little bit stronger than poplar. It's got some basalt boosters. They've also got on this is their powder drive base, which Capita, who actually makes Spring Break snowboards, kind of markets as a centered / extruded base, which I'm just going with that this is a centered base. Easiest way to explain that. The camber is a surf rocker twin profile. So what that means is that you've got regular camber between the inserts, and then you've got a little bit of zero camber right here, and then you've got an early rise surf camber on the nose and tail. So when you're looking at this board, it doesn't have a major kick up in the nose and tail, but once you put your weight over the inserts, the board actually flattens out a little bit and you get a little bit more lift on the nose and tail. What this does is that it actually lifts your contact points up off the snow, giving you a little bit more of that kind of rocker feel that you get in a board, but also giving you more of that power that you'd have in a traditional camber board. So some evidence of this is that I had my board in the back of my truck, bindings down, it flipped over going around some turns, and was sliding around the back of my truck until I could pull over and get it right back up to the side that I wanted it on. But in the meantime, it's scratched up right in here and right back here, which when you're looking at it, right here is nowhere near where the contact points of your snowboard are. So what this does is it gives you a really forgiving ride. There's been a few times where I've taken a few big impacts, and it's kind of interesting because the board actually almost feels a little bit squirrely on the landing, but it's probably saved me from catching an edge and looping out. So it's probably saved me a few times because I've landed a couple times pretty big off some side hits into flats, and that rocker profile, I almost feel a little bit squirrely, but it's definitely kept me from catching the edge and looping out. Another thing to mention about this is the stiffness of this board. Capita rates this at a 5, but I honestly personally would rate it as probably like a 7 or an 8 even. This is probably one of the stiffer boards that I've ridden throughout my entire life. Capita, as I've found with this board and also one of my friends' boards, rates their boards a lot less stiff than they actually are. I thought this would be more of a break-in period, maybe possibly with this, but that didn't end up being the case. This board is still super stiff. Even after I dinged up the sidewall and dinged up the base, probably even the core, this board is still super, super stiff. The other thing to mention, guys, is that for the Pow Twin, the 2020 to 2021, which is this board here, and then the 2021 and 2022 boards are exactly the same in terms of spec. The only thing that actually changes with these boards is the top graphic and the bottom graphic. So on the 2021 version, you get the Spring Break with the jet ski, and then the Kooks Only No Locals. On the 2022 version, you get a Ferrari on fire with a dual split kind of image on the top. And I believe it says no parents, no rules on the bottom. And then speaking on the graphics, it has a very shiny top sheet. It's, I want to say, some form of glass, which I found out is kind of weak. Also, kind of take note that it was a really bad snow year. I ended up hitting a rock and it cracked the top sheet, didn't crack the sidewall. So knowing that is that basically that the top sheet, whatever they use to make this, is actually weaker than the entire edge and also the sidewall itself. So interesting thing to take a note. The die cut base is pretty sweet. I've dinged mine up a little bit, but that just came out to that this year is a pretty rough year for snow. I mean, we didn't have a lot of coverage, and the Mount Rose chutes, which I was riding a bunch this year, opened up, even though one of the ski patrollers said they needed probably about 4 feet more of snow to cover all the rocks. So that's just where we're at in terms of that, in terms of durability. So let's talk about some of the things I really like on this board. One, it's super wide. I ride a size 14 boot. So this thing coming in at, let's see, the waist width is 27.8 centimeters wide, and then the nose and tail are 32.7. That's one of the widest boards you'll ever find out in the market without getting into like the crazy like 172s and like above. So this board is awesome. The float on it is amazing. Tahoe didn't have the best snow year, but we got a couple of 1 foot days where I just rode this thing with my bindings completely centered, had no problems, even started riding switch in the POW, which was a lot of fun. And then we had one really huge day where it was 24 inches, resort was closed, and then another 24 inches. So we were probably looking about 3 feet with the compression that would happen overnight. I set my bindings back, just one insert pack, and had zero problems riding. One of the easiest days riding I've had in really deep snow, and all around one of the best boards that I've had to ride in the POW. So I've always had camber boards. I love them. I've ridden rocker boards before, but this kind of mixed up profile I really love. When you can get the camber between the bindings for that extra pop and stability when you're going fast into those turns, it's awesome. But it gives you a little bit of that forgiveness that you would get out of a rocker board in the nose and tail, which is amazing. So one of the things that I'm not the biggest fan of, and it's kind of a staple for the Spring Break lineup, is the radius. On the 162, it's got a 6.8, I want to say meter radius, and it's super, super tight. It's great for kind of going like low to medium speed. You can get really nice, tight, sharp turns. But for me, I'm 6'6". So my center of gravity ends up being a little bit too high and a little bit behind where it actually should be when you're initiating those turns, unless I'm getting really, really low to the ground. So for me, the radius is a little bit too tight. I wish it was closer to like a 7.7. That tight turning radius does make those quick turns really awesome. So if you ever have those times where you're riding with your buddies and you need to make that last minute turn, you're going to make it with this board because you're going to be able to get on that edge and it's going to whip you around really quickly. It's also really good for riding in POW, riding in those tight trees, because the tight radius actually lets you hook into the snow and it'll push you around those trees a little bit easier. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it because as much as I ride kind of medium to low speed most of the time, there are times when I want to go fast, and this board doesn't want to actually hook into the edge when you're going super fast because the radius is so tight. So in order to go fast with this board, you kind of end up either having to side slip slightly as you're going, or if you were good enough and have really good edge control, you can kind of sit back on the board and ride the back edges of your board. It's a little bit more difficult and a little bit more straining on your legs. And when you're going fast, you tend to lean forward on your board, not backwards. So it's a really odd way to ride when you're going really fast. So this board in the park is pretty awesome. The width means that when you're getting onto rails and board slides, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to slide out or catch your toes. You're going to be locked on there. As long as you can keep your balance side to side, you're good to go. The only thing I don't like about it, and it comes back to the radius, is that the tight radius, if you're in a park going a little bit faster, your setup turns end up being, again, a little bit more slidey, or you have to make smaller setup turns, which to me isn't as stable going into it. And it tends to make you want to either continue the turn or kind of be a little bit more slidey, which going into rails and off of jumps makes it so you're almost guaranteed to turn coming off of them. The titanium radius can also save you though when you're coming off of rails or off of jumps, as long as you're centered over your bindings. If you're not quite rotated around enough, or if you're a little off center, that edge will kick in and it'll save you pretty quickly. It can also catch and loop you for a little bit if you're not centered within your bindings. So overall, I honestly love this board. I just wish that the side cut radius was a little bit bigger, just for me personally, because I'm just a huge dude and I want to go a little bit faster. But for like kind of party laps with your friends, slush laps in the spring, POW days, this thing is amazing. If you're trying to ride powder and you want to step up your game and go and start riding switch, not just like, oh, hey, I'm going to ride switch out of the landing for a little bit and then pop back around a regular, I would definitely give this board a try because you're not going to have to set your stance back to ride in, foot to foot and a half of powder, you can just ride this thing with completely twin. Especially if you're a smaller rider with smaller feet. If you size up on this, which you really don't need to, this board will be amazing in POW for you. But yeah, so that's my review of the Spring Break Powder Twin. If you guys have any questions for me, leave them down in the description. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe. And have a good one, guys. Peace.